Chapter 6: Who Doesn't Like Cake? A chapter on vaccine ingredients. Emily Shauna was nervous because her turn was next. This wasn't her first oral presentation in front of her class, but it might be my last, she worried. Emily's dad was an environmental toxicologist, and his passion for chemistry had rubbed off on her. Her young childhood so far had been all about home experiment kits instead of dolls. She'd played with test tubes and Bunsen burners, under supervision of course, instead of a soccer ball. And now, at 8 years of age, she was already determined to rid the world of toxic chemicals, like her daddy was trying to do. So when the class had been tasked with presenting an environmental report on what chemicals posed the most danger to children, her dad had gotten a funny gleam in his eye, like he'd thought of a wonderfully witty practical joke to pull on someone. Not on her, of course. My daddy wouldn't do that. But on someone or something, that was for sure. And even at her young age, Emily knew that the topic she'd finally chosen with her dad's help was a hot one. She remembered hearing her parents argue that night when they thought she was asleep. "She can't present on that. Are you crazy? And in front of all those parents, eh?" "Why not? It's the truth." "It's your truth, Chris." "Sorry, that's not fair, I know. But if it's the truth, why doesn't anybody else believe it? No one up here in the north does, and it's even worse down in the States. Despite all the studies published in the medical literature, people just aren't listening." More and more people are starting to listen, and she doesn't have to go all crazy on the topic, just present the facts, straightforward facts. Leave the commentary out. The facts speak for themselves, eh? But she's 8 years old. She won't even be able to pronounce half the stuff. "Wanna bet?" "Okay, mister, I'll take that bet. A back rub for me. No, a full body massage. 1 hour. Not just one of your half-hearted shoulder rubs." "You're on. And if I'm right, and she nails it, I get—" Daddy's voice had quieted down by that time, as it often did when Daddy smiled at Mommy and gave her a kiss and whispered in her ear, so Emily didn't know what her daddy would get. "Mommy will probably bake him a chocolate cake or something like that. My daddy loves cake." And that is why we should never sniff glue. Emily was brought back to the present by the polite applause and a few giggles from the class and the parents as Jamie sat down proudly. "Thank you, Jamie. That was excellent," said Miss Tomlinson. "Emily, why don't you go next?" Emily picked up her paper, walked to the front of the class, cleared her throat, and began. "The chemicals in our North American vaccines, toxicological classification, and potential risks." Whew, I did it, thought Emily. She'd been worried about pronouncing the title just perfectly. She didn't think that brief pause in the middle would cost her daddy his cake. She hoped for a piece too. Mrs. Shauna looked over at Emily's teacher. Miss Tomlinson nodded at her with raised eyebrows. "Wow, impressive topic," her look said. "She gets it from her dad," Mrs. Shauna gestured back, glancing sideways at her husband. "Shots are an important part of our health and our safety from infectious diseases, and it is important to understand the ingredients we use to make vaccines so we can know they are safe for all of us." She'd practiced the gesture with her left hand to arc across the whole room from right to left. "First, some vaccines have mercury. Mercury is a known neurotoxin that kills brain cells by disrupting the electron transport chain in our mitochondria. This results in cellular death, especially in our brain cells. Mercury is also found in old-fashioned glass thermometers and some new light bulbs, so be careful if you break one. It should be carefully disposed of as toxic waste. Second, most vaccines have aluminum. Aluminum sounds harmless, but if we get too much of it, it is also a neurotoxin. Its toxic effects are also synergistic when given at the same time as mercury, so be careful not to get them together. This time, Mrs. Shauna felt a different vibe from Emily's teacher. She glanced over and saw that impressed had been replaced with a frown. Next, many vaccines have formaldehyde. This chemical is a known carcinogen. That means it causes cancer. It also causes kidney damage. But these dangers are known to mainly happen when you breathe it in, like if you work in a chemical factory or with cadavers. Those are dead people that scientists study. No one has studied injected formaldehyde for safety yet. Vaccines also have polysorbate 20 and 80. Some people worry about these preservatives, but they are classified as GRAS, which stands for generally regarded as safe, which means it is safe, probably, but we haven't studied it yet. Glutaraldehyde is another chemical, and it's like formaldehyde. It is fatal if you breathe in too much, so don't. It is also corrosive to body tissues. Monosodium glutamate is MSG. It is what makes our Chinese food taste yummy. It is an excitotoxin. This means it isn't good for our brain. But don't worry, vaccines only have a little bit. Now Mrs. Shauna felt the stares from the other parents as well. Her husband, of course, was oblivious. He simply stared proudly at his daughter. "Where did she whispered. "It wasn't me," quietly. "Seriously, I just showed her the FDA website, the American site, and how to find the vaccine product inserts on it. Oh, and the description section of the inserts that lists the ingredients. The rest is all her." 2-phenoxyethanol is a preservative for some vaccines. It is known to cause reproductive defects, which means someone can't have more babies, but vaccines only have a little bit. Octoxanol is also a chemical that makes people not have babies. I don't know why. Giggles from the kids in the room. Oxylphenol and nonylphenol ethoxylate are harmful if swallowed, so don't eat them. They can also cause cancer. Cetyltrimethylammonium bromide is also something you shouldn't eat. It also burns body parts. Also, glyphosate is a chemical that kills weeds, so farmers use it. People think it causes cancer. A man won $289 million because he got cancer from it. People who make vaccines don't try to put it in, I think, but independent tests show it contaminates 5 of our vaccines. Deep breath and a smile on Emily's face. All the hard words were done. Also, scientists use parts of animals and of people to make vaccines. Here are some of the parts: protein from your blood, called albumin, cells from little babies that didn't get born, cow blood, cow hearts and other cow parts, kidney cells from monkeys, parts of chicken and eggs, baby guinea pigs who were never born, with another hand gesture to the class pet in its cage in the corner of the room. Two of the little girls in the room started crying. But it's all accurate, Chris whispered to his wife. Every word. It's in kids speak, but it's all true. They both saw Miss Tomlinson stand up and start moving toward the front of the room. Mrs. Shauna sensed her husband was about to step forward to intercept her. She put her hand on his arm gently. He'd learned to listen to her over the years, to trust her. Emily can handle this, she said with her eyes. She's all you, after all. And so, in conclusion, vaccinations are very important and they are very safe. The good news for you, a sweeping gesture again, is that you have already had almost all of your shots. We don't need any more until grade 4, but only 6 of them. Then 2 more when we are teenagers, but that's all. If you want to know more, you can read about those chemicals on the website of these places. Deep breath, more big words. The Environmental Protection Agency, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Consumer Product Safety Commission, and the Federal Drug Administration. Thank you. Emily didn't understand why only her parents were clapping, 5 kids were crying, and Miss Tomlinson looked very different than she did earlier that day. Emily had never been to the principal's office before. It was nice, although she wasn't exactly in her office. Mommy and Daddy are in her office. I'm just out here in the waiting room. I wonder why the principal wanted to talk to them. Emily, dear, would you like a chocolate? This from Miss Jones, the secretary. She was always nice to Emily when she helped on field trips. Oh, yes, please. She reached into the candy bowl on the desk and picked one of the gold-wrapped ones. The door to the office opened and her parents came out. Mommy looked angry. Daddy looked like Daddy always did, proud of her. Let's go, Emily. We are taking you home early today, said Mommy. To make cake, Mommy? Does Daddy get to have his cake?